DDP, the Deep Dive Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. Get ready, because today we're diving into something pretty unique, a shape, actually, the monohedron.
Yeah, it's not your typical, square or circle.
Definitely not. So, to kick things off, for anyone who hasn't encountered this yet, you know what a polyhedron is in geometry.
Sure.
Polyhedron means many or multiple in ancient Greek,
Uh-huh.
and hedron means face.
Okay.
So a polyhedron is a 3D object that has several faces,
Right.
like a cube or a pyramid.
Yeah.
Those are polyhedra. They have several faces, but also several edges.
Yeah.
You would think that's always the case for all 3D objects.
Uh-huh.
But now, get this. The monohedron is a polyhedron that has just one face, as well as a single edge and no vertex at all. Now, I'm really curious. How can something be three-dimensional and only have one side? I'm picturing something like a Mobius strip, but like 3D.
You're on the right track, and here's the key. Every single point on that surface actually leads back to itself, creating a never-ending loop. That key concept is this continuous, never-ending surface. That's what makes it so unique. You take a square, and while rotating it, you twist it at the same time. That's how you get this shape where you could, theoretically, just keep traveling forever.
Wow. And that's possible in 3D space?
It is. That's what makes the monohedron so special. It takes that idea of a one-sided surface, like the Mobius strip, and brings it into the third dimension. And get this, it was actually theorized decades ago, long before we could actually make one.
Really? So who came up with this mind-bending shape?
A French physicist named Jean-Pierre Petit, he was a specialist in topology. But the thing is, back then, it was all theoretical. It wasn't until recently, with advancements in 3D printing, that a company called UNILATER was able to actually manufacture it.
Ah, so that's how this theoretical shape finally became, well, a real thing you can hold in your hand.
Exactly, and they're making them in all sorts of sizes and colors. You can even get one in stellar black with these tiny little micro spangles.
Oh, wow, that sounds beautiful. So we've got this mind-boggling shape finally brought to life by technology. But it's more than just a cool geometric object, right? There's this whole other layer to the monohedron, something about energy fields and, well, healing.
You're right, there is, and that's where things get really interesting. We're going to be exploring how this object, which came from, complex math and physics, is finding its way into the world of holistic medicine.
Okay, now we're talking. I am definitely ready to hear more about that. But first, let's stick with the geometry for a bit. What exactly makes the monohedron so special, energetically speaking? You mentioned topology. Can you expand on that a little more?
Of course. So topology, remember, it's all about looking at the underlying structure of shapes. And some believe that certain shapes can actually emit, well, subtle energy vibrations.
You mean like the shape itself is giving off some kind of energy?
That's the idea. And these vibrations, sometimes called form waves, can interact with our own energy fields.
I've definitely heard of that concept in other alternative healing modalities.
Exactly. And this isn't entirely new. Think about, for example, feng shui.
Oh yeah, where the arrangement of furniture and stuff is supposed to affect energy flow.
Right. The monohedron, with its unique geometry, takes this concept to another level.
So it's like supercharged feng shui.
You could think of it that way. And it's not just about the overall shape, but also the direction of the monohedron's spiral. It can be crafted to spiral clockwise or counterclockwise. And what's so fascinating is that no matter how you turn a monohedron, the spiral always seems to go in the same direction. It's unique that way.
Hold on, really? So it's not like a spiral staircase where, it looks different depending on if you're going up or down?
Exactly. It's like a clock. Its hands always turn clockwise.
Okay, yeah.
But if you were to look at that clock from behind, the hands would look like they're turning counterclockwise.
Right. Like if you're under a sink trying to loosen a bolt, it feels like you're tightening it.
Yeah. So with the monohedron, shouldn't it look clockwise from one side and then counterclockwise from the other?
You'd think so, right?
But that's where the monohedron breaks the rules. It doesn't matter which way you look at it, the spiral always winds in the same direction.
Okay, now you're really messing with my head. So are you saying there are two types of monohedrons, like one that spirals clockwise and one that goes counterclockwise?
Precisely. Just like you can't put a left-hand glove on your right hand, or mirror images.
And those have different effects?
That's what some people believe. The clockwise monohedron is thought to be connected to what's called structuring energy. And the counterclockwise one is linked to destructuring energy.
Okay, I gotta be honest, those terms sound a little out there to me. What do they actually mean when you're using it?
Think of it this way. Structuring energy is like bringing things together, creating order, making things stable.
Right.
It's like getting your thoughts organized or feeling you're grounded.
Okay, so if I'm feeling scattered and overwhelmed, a clockwise monohedron might help me get my act together.
Exactly. Now, destructuring energy is about breaking things down, letting go of stuff that's no longer helpful, and making room for something new.
Interesting.
It's kind of like cleaning out mental clutter or getting rid of emotional blockages.
So it's not really about good energy versus bad energy. It's more about what your intention is and what you're hoping to achieve.
That's a good way to look at it. It's like picking the right tool for the job.
For our listeners who are super curious and want to try this out themselves, where can they get a monohedron?
The official source is UNILATER.
Okay.
They really focus on making high-quality monohedrons crafted very precisely.
Nice.
They have all sorts of sizes and materials so people can find one that really connects with them.
And I'm guessing they have both the clockwise and counterclockwise versions available.
Of course. They even have different colors, although that's more about personal preference and aesthetics.
Makes sense. So if our listeners want to learn more about this and maybe get a monohedron for themselves, where should they go?
You can find everything you need on their website, unilater.com.
Awesome. So we've talked about the shape, the math, the topology, but how are people actually using this thing? I mean, how does a monohedron actually fit into holistic healing?
Well, one of the most common ways is using it during meditation.
Okay, makes sense. So like holding it in your hand while you meditate.
You could do that, but some practitioners actually place it on specific points on the body.
Oh, interesting. Like energy centers, those kinds of things.
Exactly. Places like the solar plexus or the root chakra.
Ah, those are pretty key points in a lot of different traditions, right?
They are, and the idea is that the monohedron, with its unique geometry and its energy, can help to balance and harmonize these chakras.
So you're putting this shape on someone, and it's supposed to, like, shift their energy. What does that actually feel like?
It really depends on the person. Some people report feeling warmth or tingling. Others describe a sense of deep relaxation.
So a lot of variation then.
Yeah, it's pretty subjective. Some people even say they feel a heightened awareness of energy flowing through their body.
Whoa, that's pretty intense. But even if it's subjective, I mean, if people are feeling real benefits, that's got to count for something, right?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, the most important measure is how someone feels. If they're experiencing a positive change, that's what matters.
Totally agree. So meditation, chakras, so it sounds like there's a whole world of energy stuff happening here that, well, most of us probably aren't even aware of.
It really is. And, it all goes back to Jean-Pierre Petit, the physicist who first envisioned the monohedron. He had this whole cosmological model based on this shape, this idea of, multiple universes.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot about that. It wasn't just one other universe, right? He proposed 4.
That's right. It's time to dive into the deep end of cosmology and see where this seemingly simple shape takes us.
DDP, the Deep Dive Podcast.
Okay, so we're back, and I am more than ready to dive into this whole multiple universes thing. Last we left off, we were talking about how the monohedron, this, seemingly simple shape, actually inspired a cosmological model with not just one, but 4 universes.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is. So how do we even get from a shape to a theory about, the entire universe?
Well, remember how the monohedron is based on this rotating square?
How is this even possible? How do you even make a 3D shape with just one side?
Well, it all begins with a square. You have to imagine rotating a square around a post, like it's orbiting it.
Okay, I can picture that.
But here's the trick. As that square orbits the post, you have to also turn the square itself a quarter turn with every full circle around the post.
Wait, slow down for a second. So the square is spinning on its own and going around the post at the same time?
Yes. It's way easier to understand if you can actually see it.
Yeah.
If you go to unilater.com, they have a fantastic animation that shows you exactly how this works.
Oh, I've seen that. It's so cool to see that single surface just kind of appear out of the spinning square. I know there's like math equations involved in all this, but you've explained it perfectly for someone like me who needs to see it to get it.
It really does seem impossible, doesn't it? It's almost like we've squared the circle, so to speak.
Okay, so we've got this thing built from a square, but now you're saying there are 4 universes connected to this shape. That's where I need you to break it down for me.
All right, well, remember that square we started with to build the monohedron? Just think of each side of that square as a different universe.
Okay, I'm picturing the square, so walk me through these universes.
The 2 sides opposite each other, those represent universes. We're kind of familiar with our own universe, which is made of matter.
Right.
And then its twin, which is made of antimatter.
Right, the antimatter universe where everything's the opposite. Kind of spooky.
Yeah, and in that twin universe, the arrow of time is actually reversed, too.
Okay, that's wild. But we've only talked about 2 universes so far. What about those other 2 sides of the square?
Those represent universes where time isn't straightforward like we experience it. Instead, time is what we call imaginary.
Imaginary time, like square root of -1 imaginary.
Exactly.
So now we're talking about stuff that's beyond physics, right? We're getting into metaphysics.
You got it. Think about like the realm of consciousness interacting with our physical plane of material reality from out of time.
Okay.
Maybe the domain of spirits, perhaps even interdimensional beings.
Wow.
Who knows?
Okay, that's fascinating. Consciousness existing outside of our normal perception of time and interacting with us from outside of time. Two physical universes going in opposite directions in time, and then two metaphysical universes. Why two of each?
Because our material universe has a dual nature, and so does the immaterial universe. So the negative matter world also has its own negative metaphysical counterpart.
I think I'm still with you, but how does all this tie back to the monohedron itself? How can one shape represent all of this?
Imagine you're walking along the surface of the monohedron, that one continuous surface. Every time you make a full loop around the shape, the arrow of time shifts by 90 degrees, lining you up with a different universe.
So I walk around the monohedron and suddenly, boom, I'm hanging out with ghosts.
That's one way to think about it. And if you wanted to get back to your original time, you'd have to make 4 full trips around, connecting with each of those 4 universes along the way.
This is seriously mind-blowing. We started with what seemed like a simple shape, and now we're talking about 4 different universes all connected together. What does it all mean?
It really makes you question everything we think we know about reality, doesn't it?
This deep dive has been a wild ride. We started with what seemed like a simple shape, and now we're talking about its connection to multiple universes and even its potential in energy healing. It's a lot to take in.
It really shows how the monohedron brings together science, art, and metaphysics.
It does.
It makes us rethink everything we think we know about reality and opens up all these new possibilities.
That's a great point. It's like it's a real-life symbol of how everything's connected.
And it reminds us that there's still so much we don't understand about the universe and our place in it. Who knows what other secrets are out there waiting to be discovered?
Well said. Okay, folks, that brings us to the end of our exploration of the monohedron. But before we go, we want to leave you with one last thought to think about. So if this monohedron really is a representation of all these different universes interacting and time flowing between them, what does that mean for us, for how we understand reality?
It's a really big question,
Yeah.
one that people have been trying to figure out for a long time, philosophers, physicists.
Right.
The monohedron gives us a really interesting way to think about it, but the answers might be beyond our grasp right now, you know?
It really makes you feel small, doesn't it, when you think about these huge cosmic mysteries? But it's also exciting. I mean, what if we could tap into these other dimensions? What could we learn?
Maybe one day we will. As science keeps advancing, who knows? Maybe those secrets will be revealed.
It's pretty wild.
For now, the monohedron is like a reminder. It shows us that reality is much more complex and interconnected than we usually think.
Yeah.
It's like it's telling us to keep asking questions, keep exploring, and stay open to the unknown.
I love that. A huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the monohedron. I don't know about you, but my brain is definitely working overtime after this one. And as always, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep an open mind. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.